What's up everybody, and thank you for joining me for another video. My name is Whack4863, but you can call me Whack. In today's video, I want to give you the build and the setup that is going to give your thralls the absolute most damage they can get. Now, it doesn't matter whether you're using a single thrall or two thralls, you can use this exact method to give those followers the most possible damage you can. Before I get into the details on this build, I want to let you know that it's that time of year where I partner up with Wounded Warrior Project for their Stream to Serve week. If you're interested in joining me in support for the Wounded Warrior Project, the link to my campaign is in the description below. Now you can obviously just donate at that link, or if you're not able to donate, go ahead and share that link with your friends and help me garner more support and more recognition for that campaign. Now let's get into the build. There are some things that I want to cover that aren't part of this build, but I think it's important for me to say it so that you guys are on the same page and understand how things work in Conan Exiles. So, depending on the type of weapon that you give your thrall, depends on the type of buffs and the type of armor you should be giving them. That is, if you want to buff their damage with their armor. If you're going for an armor that's going to buff their vitality, you don't have to worry about what type of armor or weapon you are giving them. But if you are going to use armor for the buffs to the different damages, you want to make sure that your thrall has the correct type of armor to complement their weapon or their damage type. So, if your thrall leveled up well in agility and you're going to give them a katana, you want to make sure you're giving them an armor that buffs their agility damage. But if you're using a two-handed sword, you want to make sure you're giving them an armor that buffs their strength damage. And I already have a video that shows the different types of damage for different weapons, and I'll link that in the top right-hand corner of this video. Now that I have that information out of the way, let's jump into what you have to do with your character to get the most damage out of your thrall. And it's going to be authority. What you want to do is put a full 20 points in authority, and you want to corrupt 19 of those points. Now the last perk in authority is completely up to you whether you want to run a single thrall or two thralls. No matter what, this build is going to give you the best damage output for your thrall because the 19 points in authority when you do damage gives you an additional bonus to their damage. And in my testing on the first light attack with a two-handed sword, he was doing an additional 38 damage with that one swing. That was an increase of over 23% damage to that target per swing. Now, something that I think is important to mention here is that if you're running War Party, you should not be using armor or buffs that give your followers additional damage. When you use War Party, it negates that. It doesn't actually work. So if you've been using a armor that buffs your followers damage with the War Party perk, it's not actually working. The only time those armors and buffs that affect your follower damage work is when you have a single thrall following you. Now that doesn't mean you can have the War Party perk and just take a single thrall. It does actually negate it when you choose the War Party perk, so make sure you're not wearing an armor that buffs your followers damage or using the elixirs that buff your followers damage if you have that War Party perk selected. Now on top of that, you want to buff your thralls with elixirs and foods. So you can give your thrall the Elixir of Grace if they are an agility weapon type. You can give them an Elixir of Might if they are a strength weapon type. That is going to increase their damage by 15% to the respective weapon damage types. Additionally, there are foods that you can use to buff those damages by 15% again. So for agility, it would be cooked grouper or salted exquisite meat. For strength, it would be cooked catfish, salted pork, or the exotic feast. Now, for the potions and the food that I just listed, you are going to have to force feed your thrall eating those. They will not use those on their own. You do have to put it in their inventory and click use in order for them to actually gain the benefits from that item. Now I've saved one of the most important buffs for last. This is going to buff your damage modifier for your Thrall. So for those of you that don't know what a damage modifier is, it is a hidden stat for your follower. Now, this directly buffs that stat. It actually adds 0.25 to that stat. So if you have a Thrall that has a 1.0 damage modifier, when you do this buff, it's actually going to have a 1.25 damage modifier. And that is the foundation for all the other buffs that you give your follower. So this buff is the most important out of all of them if you're looking to get the highest damage out of your follower. So what you want to do is actually give your Thrall cooked pork. That's on top of the food and elixirs that you're already giving them. So it's kind of a double buff from food because pork raises their damage modifier both in agility and strength by 0.25, and then the other buffs, the elixir and the food that you feed them, give them an additional 15% bonus damage to their respective damage types. And I want to know in the comment section below, have you been feeding your Thralls pork all along and taking advantage of this? I'd like to thank all my YouTube members for your continued support. Y'all are absolute legends. If you'd like to become a legend, there's a button that says join on this page. Click that for details. There's 2 videos on the screen. Click one of those to watch next, and I'll meet you over there.